welcome to our discussion on utilizing the ISO 27000 series to build a resilient. In today's digital age, ensuring robust cybersecurity practices is crucial for organizations to protect their sensitive information. ISO 27000 series offers a comprehensive framework to establish and maintain an effective information security management system. And today we will explore how organizations can leverage this to cultivate a resilient cybersecurity culture. So we're going to talk about how ISO 27001 and 2 are collaborative, or they support one another in these efforts, training and awareness, risk management, and more topics. Before we dive into our discussion, let me introduce myself. I'm honored to be your moderator for this session. I have 15 years in information security experience, and I'm welcomed by our wonderful panelists, and I will now let them introduce themselves. So we can start with Errol. So Errol, please introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. My name is Earl Abrahams, and I'm the founder of company IT Security Mind. I have more than 4 decades plus in information security experience and skills. I'm also an experienced cybersecurity speaker globally. I come from a very decaded background, which is mainframe, COBOL, programming, and whatever. I'm also very experienced in cloud multi-factor authentication. I'm also a digital forensics expert as well. And I've been in the profession since 1980 as such. I've worked for many global organizations. I'm talking about managed network services. And I also worked for one of the big 4 risk organizations. I come from a very 360 experience where security is concerned. So I come from a networking, security, architecture, and enterprise as such. I'm certified PCP partner and trainer. I'm certified in the ISO 27032 lead cybersecurity manager, certified in the ISO 27002 as well, which is the senior lead manager for that is the newer version, which is 2022, and also risk manager, and also certified as ISO 27700, and I'm also a digital forensics expert. So I'm actually happy and joyful to meet the other panelists. And over to you, Christopher.
Okay, I'm Christopher Magnan. I'm from the United States, and I'm a program manager, system engineer by trade, and I have deployed many IoT, smart city, and OT, IT convergence implementations. And cybersecurity has become a significant principle. The cybersecurity design, the management, the cybersecurity operations, as well as continuous improvement has been as critical as the design itself as threats evolve. I have been an engineer program manager since roughly 2002, and I have worked with many organizations within the United States government. And I'll hand it off to Karolien.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon to all of you from Belgium, and welcome to our session. My name is Karolien Van Bel. I am managing partner of Olinco. This is a company of the Kronos Group. Kronos is one of the largest IT groups here in Belgium. Olinco's core business are cybersecurity awareness training programs for end users. I work as an awareness coach, a change manager, and certified data protection officer. So my expertise is more for this session on the culture part. Thank you, and I hand it over to Abdelmalek.
Thank you very much, Karolien. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Abdelmalek Najih. I am CEO and founder of Unadvised. I'm consultant, auditor, and trainer specialized in the field of GRC of many domains like information security, IT, business continuity, and so on. And of course, I'm passionate about the ISO 27000 series. So I have worked with on many management systems in the past, within Africa and in Europe. And well, that's it. Thank you. And to you, Mike.
All right, thank you. and pleasure to be joined by you all. So we will get into it, and the first really point that we want to address is to just open this up, and what are everyone's initial thoughts on using the ISO 27000 series as a way or a methodology to develop a cyber aware culture? Maybe Abdelmalek, maybe you can speak to that.
Yes, thank you, Mike. So actually, I want just to emphasize the fact that there's a small or maybe a big difference between awareness and culture, because awareness is just whether you are aware of something happening or not, whilst a culture is the group of values, ethics, beliefs, and conduct based on the ISO 37301. So I know it's not part of the ISO 27000 series, but well, we can grab this definition. And by the way, I have been working on many management systems, and the issue was not on the skills level, competence, or technical level, but it was more than that, more cultural. And for example, people were afraid to implement management systems, afraid to get controlled by such standards, etc. And by the way, the ISO 27000, which is called also the vocabulary, mentioned that the ISMS success factor is the organization's culture towards the information security. Well, also this topic to me was the longer awaited, to be honest, because I've been discussing this in my last conference in Brussels, and I mentioned that the fact that we do not have the same kind of speech with the top management will not facilitate the implementation or the maintenance of ISMS in general. So thank you, Mike.
No worries. No worries. Does anyone want to address this point or their thoughts on the culture topic before we?
Yes, if I may, how do you establish a culture of safety and security? It is not done one day to another. So it is, in fact, it is a continuous exercise, and it is very important that you involve everyone in your organization, from top to bottom, not only IT or not only information security department. It's everyone must be involved, and it's also important if you foresee training programs that you make the contents easy enough to understand for everyone, and also that you target your different groups, and you have different groups in an organization, some administrative personnel, but also some gray collars, white collars, so you should target your messages to them. So this is how you can establish a culture of safety and security.
Yes, I actually have an open-ended question for the group. How does actually a culture get built, right? Besides the principles and the policies, how does one actually get built within an organization?
Well, it must, as a must for me, it must have support from management. That's the number one, and it's also the number one of failure within organizations. It's when it is not supported by management. So this is also, when I come to organizations, my first question: is there support from management? So this is a must for me. Yeah.
Okay.
Both. In addition to add to Karolien's comment, I need a champion to broadcast and disseminate the message. What are the key components of success, and what are the key risk factors? In addition, you need to have a strong change manager, not someone who is well versed in the change management process and manages a change control board, but is involved with organizational change. One who can identify the key success factors and develop a plan, a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and implement metrics to continuously measure and monitor the progress. And also, you need to identify who are the key players and what are they responsible for, because in quote-unquote event management, if something does occur, you don't want to plan how to mitigate the effects or mitigate the event. You want to react to the event to mitigate the effects. So you want to be more proactive than reactive with building a cybersecurity culture. And in addition, cyber threats are always evolving. So what you need is someone to disseminate that information throughout the organization. And as Karolien mentioned, cybersecurity is inclusive. Everybody is involved. So you have to have a common language that everyone understands and everyone can buy into.
Yes, I totally agree, Christopher. So cybersecurity culture, it is in fact change management. We have to change our behavior. And so in the beginning, it's so important that you clearly state these messages. Indeed, who are the key players? Is there support from management? But also, why do we do this within our organization? And why is it so important? But also, you as an employee for our organization, what's in it for you? So these messages in the beginning of the project must be crystal clear. So in fact, there is a parallel certainly with change management. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or the red wire is change
I saw
management.
Errol had something to add. So Errol, maybe would you like to add?
Yes, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Christopher and Karolien. I mean, what you actually just added now is very concrete, and I support your comment as such. You know, for me, is that it's very important to have a correct culture in your organization. And for me, it starts at having the correct virtues. And when I talk about the correct virtues, is the following, is that the virtues consist of clear, consistent, and effective. And that must come from a top-down approach. Okay, not from a bottom-up approach, but from a top-down approach. And this is where I see organizations are doing wrong. Some organizations that I actually have visited, you know, when I actually talk to the CEOs and whatever, okay, they see it differently. They see, I mean, you mentioned Caroline and Christopher as well about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a process. It's a continuous process. Okay, this journey is very long. Okay, it's dynamic. Okay, it's wide and it's long. But then the culture and the virtues must be part of it. And that's why once that is actually built, once the organizations understand this, then the implementation of the security goes much smoother, because security doesn't reflect to technology. Security is a process, is a continuous process. And that's where I see the benefit is that organizations must start from the top down and then understand what is the virtues of the culture of the organization. If they actually manage to overcome that, then the rest will actually be a smooth process for them.
Yep. Go ahead, Abdel. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So yes, I join Errol when it comes to deploying, for example. Yes, it's from top to bottom. But I would add the fact that, well, actually it's both ways when it comes to feedback, because you deploy something and you come to audit or you come to test, for example. And what I want to add also is that building a culture actually is like, to me, an ISMS. So it's a full process which must start by collecting the feedbacks from the person, for example, to know what are their culture, to analyze the gap first. And then, of course, we have to define the ethics, the values, etc., through policies and through guidelines, for example, to deploy them to each personnel. Of course, there must be a communication, encouragement, and in the end, sanctions in case of non-conformities. And of course, we have to perform reviews periodically.
Yep. So this point of the top-down approach has been a theme in a lot of the points that were being discussed. So let's dive deeper into that. Why must a top-down approach in terms of building a culture be taken? Why is that so critical? Perhaps maybe Chris or Caroline or Abdelmalek, Errol, maybe you have some thoughts. Yep.
I can start. Well, actually, because who knows better the business is the top management, so we cannot allow the person to choose their culture. You know, I might be rude regarding this, but yes, it's the top management who should set their values, their vision, their ethics. So it's there who leads. Of course, they have to take into consideration the culture of their personnel, but we have to deploy from top to bottom.
Yes.
Yeah. Indeed, as I said, so not having the support from management is reason number one for failure. So this is so important, but also, I think it was Errol who said it, so these feedback moments, having regular feedback moments with involve everyone is also very, very important. So they feel involved, and it's not perceived as a must that they have to do on top of their other jobs.
In addition to feedback, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Christopher.
Okay, I was going to say the feedback loops that Karolien mentioned. People are very sensitive and anxious to change, so they want to be able to know if they're doing well or not doing well. And so this feedback loop from upper management tells where the improvement has been made, where improvement needs to be made, and any success stories. Just to reiterate the message, and just the repetitive nature just shows the importance of the new policy or the new culture that's being implemented. Because as I mentioned before, people are anxious to change. If this message is not getting disseminated, people will revert back to their old habits.
That is true, Christopher. I fully support your statement, and Karolien and Abdelmalek's statement is that, for me is that I've seen the changes of the transformation, in my long and extensive journey as such. And it's true what you say is that people happen to be very scared of change. For me, a change is like a transformation, okay? But then to build the culture awareness, okay, it has to come from the top down. If the top management can actually provide that vision and that mission for the rest of the organization, then I can tell you that now a lot of organizations will see the benefit of it as such.
And in addition, people will want to know what the success metrics are, and that can come from management. People want to know that they're doing something right, as I mentioned before. That it's fairly simple to conceptually, but it's difficult to implement because you have to have the repeated messaging disseminated throughout the organization.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
sorry.
Actually, I think we're probably getting into a different point. Maybe Karolien wants to discuss maybe metrics, continuous improvement, or how you measure the actual effort being put in by top management is having the desired results.
Yeah, indeed, Mike. What I wanted to add is what I see a lot in practice is you're launching an e-learning tool, for example, so to train your employees, but there is no communication on beforehand. There is no thought on how will we measure success. So these things you have to prepare this very well, and so you have to think about, okay, how will we measure a successful cybersecurity awareness program, for example. So how is that clicks on a link in a test phishing mail, or is it obliged training, or is it scores on a test? So that have to be very clear in the beginning of the program. And finally, yeah, this is what they want to see in a boardroom. So the numbers, the figures.
Right. Errol brought up in another interesting point, which I thought was very key, which was virtues. So, Errol, maybe you can elaborate on which virtues do you believe are important?
Thank you, Mike. Is that, earlier when I said about the virtues, is that out there, we actually are all, we are all human, okay, and we are all on this particular journey. And what I actually tell many organizations is that when it comes to virtues, it's actually the virtue is actually on the border between the truth of the security and the bad of security. So it's on the border, what is bad and what is good. So if we understand, is that if we need to implement or do a project, we don't actually, from my perspective, it's very important to understand what is good and what is bad. And we have to make the correct decisions, because these decisions are very critical for any organization. And I can tell you that now is that being a a core principle, okay, is that it's very important to implement, and not only just implement, but also understand what you plan to implement. And therefore, just to elaborate on what you just said, Mike, is that the virtues is understanding what is good and what is bad. We can't implement something which we know it is inconsistent for any organization. It must be very well thought of, okay, and it must be properly defined, okay, from a project management side, and every single phase of a project management has to involve security at every single layer. So therefore, that is part of the virtues. And if we understand this, the acceleration that we have seen in the last 3 years, especially with the cyber attacks, that will actually deplete.
Right.
We will not be able to remove the risk. The risk factor will always be there. But if we understand the virtues, we can make a difference.
Exactly. That goes hand in hand with Abdelmalek, what he said about how the top management typically, well, almost always are the best or the most understanding of their specific business. So that's a very, very key point. Does anyone else have any comments? I thought I heard someone. Okay, go ahead.
I want just to emphasize the fact that actually we do risk management for the ISMS, but we never take into consideration the skills of the people who implement that ISMS, for example, or cybersecurity in general. So we have, for example, some consultants or even the CISO who do not really understand the ISO 27001 or the ISO 27 series. Well, actually, these kind of standards are like elastic, so they do not have a shape, but they take the shape of each and every organization. So if it's not well implemented, so of course we will have issues. Of course, we will have controls that are not fit to the purpose of each company. That's it. Thank you.
So in terms of, let me ask a follow-up question.
Yes.
In terms of risk management and people, their lack of understanding of an ISMS, how big of a risk do you think that is, just the lack of knowledge? Is that big compared to, let's say, an outsider threat, some potential hacker, or is it something that we should be less concerned about? What are your thoughts?
Can I go ahead? Yes, actually, is the biggest risk because actually, if not well implemented, it will stop the business from doing its business actually by pushing a lot of restrictions. The top management find themselves restricted from moving freely and taking risks they esteem that are acceptable according to them. For example, sometimes maybe some clients do not have the technologies and desire, for example, to exchange files through public platforms or through USB sticks. Why not? So, for example, if there is a risk of 100,000 euros and the invoice worth 3 million, then the top management will decide to go for this, to accept the risk, while the CISO will never accept. So, once they're free in the business, then it's a big issue. It's even bigger than a security breach or a law breach.
To put it bluntly, I think the risk is huge. That's what motivates hackers or other organizations to target people, because they're the weakest link in their cybersecurity chain.
Yeah, indeed, I can confirm. And also we have numbers on this. In more than 80% of the cases, 80% of the cyber incidents is caused by human factor. So this is proven. And so, yeah, cyber criminals, they know that and they will exploit it. And with training and awareness, you will reduce the risk. But yeah, be completely safe. I think that's also an utopia.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true, Caroline, Christopher, and Abdelmalek, is that there's something that we can't get rid of. We will never get rid of risk. Okay, risk is part of our life. I mean, I always say that I actually was born in a risk world. Okay, because it's something that we will never get rid of. But if we talk about information security, there are controls that we can use to mitigate the risk. And therefore, the standards or the document that we are going to discuss tonight, which is the ISO 27001, 2022 and the ISO 27702. Okay, that is actually the Bible to mitigate risk for all organizations.
Yeah, so in which way does the actual communication of the policies or the whole ISMS project actually work in terms of a feedback loop? What key components are important? Because we already discussed how the top-down approach is the best, why it's the best, and also feedback, but what are the key components of communicating that besides virtues? Are there any other aspects? Maybe Errol, you might want to expand on the virtues or any supporting aspect. Does anyone have any thoughts on these?
Yes, thank you, Mike. Is that when you know, this is what I always say, is that if I look at the ISO 2700 family of standards, is that there's a core element that stand out, which is risk management. And for me, risk management pertains to business risk. Is that if we actually have a problem or event at any organization, we have to look what is the impact to the business. So therefore, is that when it comes to address the business risks, it involves taking the correct measurement and implementing the correct controls. If we don't implement the correct controls, we will continue to be vulnerable. I always say the following, that any organization can control their vulnerability, but we cannot control our risk, because our risk is inside and outside. So therefore, is that we must think outside the perimeter where the ISO 2700 is concerned. And that's why I say when it comes to the ISO 2700, risk management is one of the core elements, and that is to make sure that the organization is prepared for the business continuity and for the disaster recovery in case of an event as such.
So let me follow up with that and leave it up to any one of the panelists to answer this question. Is poor communication or inefficient communication style a risk in implementing a cyber-aware culture?
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead, Ed. Go ahead.
Yes, of course. Well, actually, communication as per the ISO 27701 is a whole process. So we have to identify what to communicate to, and the audience, for example, some companies understand it as they have to communicate everything. Well, it's not the case. So we have to define what to communicate, when, by whom, and to whom. So this is number one. Number two, to be a risk or not? Yes, of course, because lack of communication, we leave people outside of disconnected from the information. They don't have information about what they shall do, for example, or what's going on in general. If there's, for example, as you should breach elsewhere, etc. Is it sufficient? I guess no, because actually it should be supported by other activities. For example, I don't know, maybe something that encourage their engagement. For example, communication, their values, for example, ethics. Maybe you can set some activities to choose at the end a champion who respects this. We can include it also in the annual evaluation from the HR perspective, for example. So like this, we can ensure that with the communication and some activities, we can have these culture built within everybody.
Yep, I believe either Chris or Karolien had something to say. So.
Well, Abdelmalek pretty much summarized what I was going to say. It circles back to the point where people are averse to change and anxious with change. And so if there's continuous feedback that there's a success criteria that's being met, as well as ways to improve that will improve the cyber message that and its significance as well.
Okay. Anything to add, Karolien, or?
Well, yeah, I agree with Abdelmalek also. So communication is crucial for a successful cybersecurity awareness program. Communication, who will communicate, when, how, through which channels. So this must also be very well prepared, and lots also on beforehand. There are people also from the communication department who are around the table together with IT, together with people from HR, and even together with management, because yeah, as I said, there needs to be support from management. So yeah, I confirm communication is key, is crucial. And also who will communicate. So the management needs to communicate why is it important for the company. The supervisors, so the direct reports, they need to communicate what's in it for you, and they need to follow up and have these feedback back loops. So this is more done by the supervisors. And yeah.
Right. Earlier, we briefly touched on two key points, which I'd like to circle back to, and that is the need to reinforce the actual policies or the actual controls to actually implement a culture. It's not a one-time thing, so it's a continuous process. Does anyone have any thoughts that they would like to expand on regarding these? Because I think these are very, very important points. You're not going just to implement a training and awareness program and then assume that magic is going to happen.
That's true, Mike, is that, you know, some companies, and I've actually listened to what Karolien said earlier about training and awareness, is that it's very important, you know, once you actually plan to implement a particular system as such, okay, it's very important that there must be a key player that must be able, and that's to communicate with the rest of the organization to say, okay, this is the reason why we actually implement the new process, or this is the reason why we're implementing the new system. And this is all about, if there's no communication, okay, it can be a downfall to any organization. I've seen it. I've worked for organizations that the breakdown of communication was very toxic. I've seen it, and I can tell you that now is that, and I truly believe that communication is the pillar. But to get to that point, it comes down to the ethics as such. Does the organization have the right ethics and culture? Because if we don't actually have the right ethics and culture, how can we actually build that uniformity? And that is the concern of most organizations out there.
Is there a way to actually build that culture, though? I mean, are there ways that are better than others, rather than, let's say, for example, simply forcing some people to do some things, or maybe taking a more collaborative approach, or maybe a gamified approach? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead, Abdelmalek.
Yes, actually, as I said in the beginning, it's a process on its own. So this does not to be considered as something that is seamlessly, to be honest. So actually, we should have activities besides, and we should consider it as a process apart. Because in every ISMS we have policies, we have procedures, but the culture was never changed. So it's always rules, you know. So besides the awareness, the skills management, for example, campus, etc., this is not changing the culture in any way. So what I advise is to consider it as a process on its own, to define the context or identify the context, what's going on, what's the current culture, and where do we want to go, to define the ethics in separate documents, for example, to, as you said, gamify the process, to make some competition, and to name champions at the end of the evaluation, for example, every year. And for this matter, I advise to follow the course of the PCB ISO 37301, which is regarding more compliance, but believe me, it has many things that treats the culture topic, to be honest. So yes, it's for compliance, but we have many slides, many that will help us learn how to build really the culture of anything. So we can be based on this and apply it to the ISO 27000 standards.
Okay. Caroline, a question for you. You touched earlier on success metrics and measuring results. What kind of success metrics do you think would actually be good to consider when developing a culture?
Yeah, so you have qualitative metrics and quantitative metrics. So quantity and quality. Quality can be scores on a test, or quantity will be the number of clicks on a phishing link, or the number of times you share confidential data on a landing page with phishing tests, or it can be the number of views a page on the intranet has. It can be the number of trainings you absorb during that time. So, but it's important to think about that on beforehand, and also to hear and understand, okay, what do they want to hear in the boardroom about these numbers? What do they want to see? So it's important to define this on beforehand.
Absolutely. Does anyone else want to add onto that? I thought I saw something.
Yeah, there are also some technical metrics to take in consideration. For example, identity and access management. I read many instances where old expired accounts were hacked from former employees. So that's also a metric, is just the number of lingering accounts or expired accounts. Also, this is more going into the technical side, but the number of assets that are not cyber compliant, that can also be reported as metrics as well, which I believe will instill a cyber culture, because you're holding that organization accountable that is managing it. And if they are not managing it well, then that's a huge security risk. So
Right.
there's a lot more technical aspects as the scorecard as well.
Right. So what you're getting at, Chris, is basically the technical metrics can be a sign of user behavior that's undesired. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I think we're coming close now to the end. I'd like to wrap up before we start taking some questions. And before we really dive into the questions, I'd like to kind of review that basically building a cyber aware culture is a complex process. It involves top-down management, establishing virtues and important values which are communicated to staff and are continuously reinforced. Training and awareness plays a role, but it's overall continuous reinforcement. Now, I'm going to open up the floor to the panelists to maybe go do a roundtable before we take some questions. So we'll start at Errol, and then we'll move to Chris, Caroline, and then finally Abdelmalek, if they have any closing thoughts.
Yes, I've actually listened very attentively to what the other panelists said. Is that, you know, when it comes to the culture, when it comes to building that organization that everybody wishes for, okay, you know, in the organization there will be, you know, employees, okay, that are scared when it comes to changes. But I believe that it's the duty of the management to collaborate with those employees or the managers of those departments, and to tell them, okay, these are the changes that we plan to implement and what is the benefit to the organization. And this comes down to communication. We can actually build the best system, but if it's not communicated properly to the rest of the team, because the IEC, the employees, they are the stakeholders of the organization. So if there's no communication, it will be a failure. Thank you.
Okay. One thing that was not touched upon is empowering the cyber team to make recommendations. When I say empower, typically in traditional organizations, the cyber team is more of a measurement and reporting team. And when I say empower, I would say have them make recommendations based on the processes and the system lifecycle. They are the experts with cybersecurity. So I would say leverage their expertise to improve the cyber readiness of the organization. And to summarize, this would take a proactive versus reactive approach.
Okay, Caroline?
Yes, so here as a closing thought, I would say, so the name of the session is utilizing ISO 27000 series to build a resilient cybersecurity culture. Well, let's say even without ISO, it's becoming really a norm today. You have to do it. You have to build a culture of safety and security in your organization, because also, for example, you want to close a cyber insurance. For example, also insurance companies, they even put it as a demand to foresee training and prevention for your people. So it's so important that you do that.
Okay, so now I'm going to just ask our audience if there's any questions, just put them in the question box and we will chat with, or excuse me, ask the questions to our panelists, and then hopefully you'll get the knowledge you're seeking.
Yeah, I have seen some questions coming in.
Okay. I don't see any questions actually. So
No,
no, I don't.
Will I read them, Mike?
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so first question, how can organizations effectively leverage the ISO 27000 series to establish a robust cybersecurity culture within their workforce? What are the essential components of a cybersecurity culture, and how do ISO 27000 standards support their development? Can you provide examples of organizations that have successfully implemented ISO 27000 series to build a resilient cybersecurity culture?
Yeah.
A lot of questions here.
Yes, that's a long one. Go. Does anyone want to go? I have some thoughts, but I'm the moderator, so go ahead.
Well, I can tell you that now the ISO 27000, and I've been preaching the ISO 27000 now for many years now, since 2000 and could be 2011. I believe that the ISO 27001 is a Bible that organizations have to have, and in their closet, because it covers everything for any organization. It can be a large organization, it can be SMB, it can be a small organization. The ISO 27000 standard, and also the new one, it caters for everything that an organization needs, and that's to mitigate business risk. I can tell you now is that I have actually employed ISO 27000 once for a few organizations very successfully, and today they're reaping the benefit, because, like I said earlier, is that although when you actually implement ISO 27000, there's a continual improvement. It's not just implementing it and put it into the closet. No, it's wrong. It's a continual improvement. So therefore, the ISO 27001 caters for any organization that really wants to protect the data of the customer or the client, or the PII of the client. It can be internal or external as such.
Okay. Did anyone else want to address any of those questions? Or let's see here. I don't see any more questions coming in, actually. So.
Right. Otherwise, I see them, Mike.
Okay.
Shall I read? Can you provide examples of organizations that have successfully implemented ISO 27000 series to build a resilient cybersecurity culture? Examples of organizations you've worked for.
Yeah, I mean, I have one if no one else would like to go. Yeah, so one of the clients I had actually had a huge audit finding some time ago, and they got basically not good results from a regulator, to say the least. And so they went on a huge security transformation. They had a large budget extended to them, and they implemented ISO 27001 along with a few other things because they had a complex regulatory structure. So ISO 27001 was great. And Errol touched on a key point there, is that the continuous improvement, basically, it made its way into the organization in the terms of actual business processes, projects, which Errol also touched on earlier. But continuous improvement also means continuous reinforcement of specific behaviors, which is very important, because once you do that, then people really, that's when the real learning occurs. Training and awareness, it's okay, but until they actually carry out the behavior repeatedly over an extended period of time, and people will eventually make mistakes, then those mistakes are corrected. And that's again when a healthy cultural environment and a good communication and collaboration are really paramount, because when those mistakes occur, people might feel maybe embarrassed, or I don't know, feeling like they're not intelligent enough or good enough or whatever. And so fixing those mistakes helps people learn. So just the concept of continuous improvement, well, it also extends to other aspects, but basically when they went on that journey, they significantly reduced their risk, and the result was pretty much whenever they initiated a new project, the project leads and other stakeholders knew that, hey, we have to include the security teams in this decision, or when they had a risk, we have to go to risk management and address this in some way. So it actually resulted in tangible behaviors and a tangible reduction in risk. Does anyone else want to add any examples from their experience? Okay.
Yes, well, actually, I've been employed by an employer where they were managing their values, etc., their culture as a separate process. So they have a full department only to measure, to define and to measure the evolution of the culture within the company. And to be honest, actually, it includes the compliance point of view and also cybersecurity, and it was well, to be honest. So this is why I have been insisting on the fact that this should be considered as a full management system instead of just a side of the ISMS. Also, I wanted to add that well, to build a resilient cybersecurity culture, well, it should be built on resilience, which is the ability to absorb and adapt in changing environment. And for example, the last example we had is the COVID, for example. So the change not only come from the inside, not only solution IT stuff, but also the environmental and health, for example, etc.
Okay, and the final question I see here is, what are the key challenges organizations may encounter when fostering a cybersecurity culture, and how can these challenges be overcome? Does anyone want to address that question?
I think we addressed some concepts, such as the anxiety people have with the change management. People are resistant to change, as well as the constant communication. There needs to be a champion who is repeatedly disseminating the message throughout. Also, one thing I also just thought of is that risk analysis. There are so many cyber risks, which one has the biggest impact, which one has the biggest probability, and resources are finite. So you have to determine what is the best strategy to implement the cybersecurity culture, and where the need is needed the most, taking into consideration that people are anxious with change, and what tools can be implemented to help achieve the goals, such as frameworks or processes or other recommended practices, industry standards. So planning is another obstacle that has to be overcome as well. As everybody has said, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a continuous process. So you also need to continuously reevaluate. And also, you may need independent support from an auditor or a subcontractor. And again, resources are finite. It's going to cost time. It's going to cost money. And that's a risk-reward proposition.
And communication all the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Even if there's nothing to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, communication is the basis to success. And you actually mentioned very good points. What is needed on the cybersecurity journey and the culture. But Christoph, if I may actually add, is that when it comes to the cybersecurity culture, training and awareness is an ongoing process as well. And that's why it's very important that organizations must training awareness must be part of the vision of the organization itself. So when I walk into a boardroom and I look at the minutes, I don't want to see training and awareness at the bottom of the minutes. I want to see training and awareness as the first point of discussion, because that's going to change the culture in the organization itself.
Also, if you allow me, so I have remarked also in many organizations with whom I have worked that they consider an ISMS like something that is static. For example, conducting awareness once a year and also defining skills for every role. So once, for example, cybersecurity guy is certified as 27001, it's okay. Once it's a whole process, so you have to collect the business for those awareness and competence of the year, and this is iterative. So each year you have to figure out what are the news on the cyber and on the outside of the organization, and collect the needs and plan the trainings and awareness accordingly.
Okay, so I think that addresses all of the questions. I'd just like to thank everyone for tuning in, and don't forget to check out the latest edition of the PECB Insights magazine. And to develop your skills further, you can take a look at the upcoming training courses, and there's an upcoming PECB Insights conference in Paris, France. So once again, thanks to all the panelists, and thanks to the audience for listening and joining, and check us out next time.
Thank you, and see you in Paris.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have
Bye-bye,
a nice
everybody.
day.